Hey guys, and welcome back to the Yes Means Yes podcast. On this week's episode, we are going to be discussing with childcarers, teachers, daycare workers, all those things about child sexual violence or sexual abuse. As usual, my name is Faith Nomashev. I'm the victim advocate and outreach coordinator with Rape Counselors, and I'm going to let everyone else go around, introduce themselves, and kind of talk about what experiences they have working with children, adolescents, anyone under that 18-year-old range.
Hi, I'm Amanda Carpenter, and I actually work with Faith at Rape Counselors of East Alabama. But I have been, before I started with Rape Counselors, I actually was a pre-K teacher for 14 years.
Hi, I'm Brantley Shields. I also work with Faith at RCEA. But before coming to RCEA, I have about 7 years of experience with nannying, working in daycares, and working in a preschool.
Hi, I'm Tony Hess. I am an elementary school teacher, and I've been teaching school for 19 years now. And before being a elementary school teacher, I worked at a daycare and obviously in high school did babysitting jobs, but that's kind of my work with childcare.
Thank you.
I'm Bright Shields. I am a second-year teacher. I teach secondary education, so currently in a 9th grade history position. I've also coached. I coach currently, and I have coached since really I've graduated high school. So I've been around kids and students really my entire life, but especially since I've been out of high school.
My name is Carly Henderson, and I've been teaching for 3 years. I've taught kindergarten and pre-K. I'm currently with kindergarten, but also, I've done, babysitting. I've worked at a daycare. I've worked at summer camps, and then I also have coached junior high and high school. So I have that experience too, as far as like kids and so small children, and then the ones that are in high school too.
Hi, I'm Madison. I worked in childcare for 5 years. I worked at one in Huntsville, and I've worked at 3 in Arkansas, where I go to school. And I currently work at a clinic for kids who have disabilities.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. I feel like we have a good variety of individuals here who have worked in different kind of like sectors of childcare. So I'm excited to kind of get into the questions with you guys. So we're a rape crisis center. We mostly do with sexual assault and like sexual violence, usually like ages 13 and above. But, sometimes obviously we do have some cases that are younger or work closely with like the child advocacy center in our area. So we just really wanted to touch on like child sexual abuse and like your experiences as teachers, because we also do go into the schools. We talk about Aaron's Law, safe dating, all those things, which we're going to kind of explain more later. So just to give you all kind of like a premise for why we thought it was important to do this episode. So I want to ask everyone, have you ever experienced a child, teenager, anyone you were either a coach or carer for tell you that they were experiencing a form of sexual violence?
I do have experience with this. A family I nannied for, one of the children in the family came forward and told me that she was being molested by one of her friend's parents. And so I spoke with her parents, and they quickly got DFACS in Georgia, quickly got DFACS involved, and started working towards resolving the issues that were happening.
I've never necessarily had a child to come and tell me that, but I have had where I've taught previous children where family members have came to me that have taken care of children that were in their family somehow or some way because they had been sexually abused when they were younger and now living with them.
I've never had one tell me specifically that this was going on. And I don't know, I didn't say this earlier, but I teach middle school kids, and my teaching career, I've taught 5th and 6th grade. And I find sometimes at that age, they don't express so much with stuff. Sometimes you have to go off of signs, or or they just might ask to speak to the counselor at the school. So I've known cases where it's happening, but nobody has necessarily told me specifically that was going on.
So I know some of you had said that you had someone tell you individually, or others said that no, but there were kind of like, signs, or that you had heard it kind of like from another person. Are there ways that you could tell when a child might be a victim of sexual abuse? And have you like seen any of those signs with any kids you've worked with?
I just know, like, through the years, just research and listen to different people, especially like I taught, 4 and 5 year olds. So definitely when they're playing and how they're playing. So like, we have different centers, and one of our centers would be dress up, or it would be kitchen. And so sometimes you'll pay attention more to how they're playing, about like playing doctor and just saying different words, or maybe doing more things that you're like, wow, that's a little much for them to be doing at that age. So if I ever, and there are a couple of times, because I did teach for 14 years, that I did kind of question something sometimes, because I was like, wow, they're really, more knowledgeable about things, or just how they were playing. I would just pay more attention to it. But I never really felt at the end that I needed to question or ask anything, because I never felt that it was necessary at that time. But I guess that was my whole thing, is you just paying attention to what they're saying and how they're playing and interacting with other children.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I agree. Like, you have to kind of, sometimes their behaviors and how they are, and every child is different with necessarily how they react to what's going on. Some can be very become introverted and doesn't really say a whole lot, and then others, they are lashing out because of it happening. So sometimes it's just kind of, you have to watch for behaviors that are not normal for that child. And like I said, I've had it before where I've questioned it. I've never questioned the child, just because even though I know that, like, I will go and have a conversation with our counselor, or I'll say, hey, I don't, maybe, and she's the one that kind of will dig a little bit deeper into it and see, because she has that more access to that than what I do.
I definitely agree with Tony and Amanda as far as, you have to watch their actions, and you have to see how they're acting. I know, like, especially with 4 and 5 year olds, they're not going to be able to verbalize some things either. So their actions are what tells you, And I think it really comes down to just knowing each kid in your classroom, or each kid that you're working with, because if I know that kid, then I know that it's abnormal for him or her to come in and do that, or to come in and act that way. Especially if it's something that has just begun happening, that school year or that semester, or whenever you're around them. If I know that kid, I know that there's a change in their behavior. I know that there's a change in, wow, they don't want to be at school anymore. Like, there's just certain things that you can look for. And I think it really starts with, as an educator or as people that work with children, is getting to know those kids and kind of knowing, this is their personality. Some kids may walk in every day and just kind of be introverted. Mm-hmm. But when that kid that is not introverted comes in and acts that way, it should be, almost a sign. But you're not going to know that if you haven't, taken the time to get to know those kids and know how they act.
I definitely agree that it's all about, in my opinion, about relationships that you build with your students, being a teacher from a teacher's perspective. Not only for the fact, Carly said she works with preschoolers, and I work every day with high schoolers who are able mostly to verbalize how they're feeling, but they don't a lot of times, especially with someone that they don't feel comfortable with. So I think that those relationships that you have with your students, knowing when they come in the door if something's off, not necessarily, bringing up things, asking them, questioning them, but, asking them what's wrong, and digging further into things sometimes I think can be very beneficial. But like I said, I think it all goes back to the relationships that you have with the children that you're working with in any capacity.
Another one that I saw, like y'all said, it's like paying attention to their behaviors. Just with my experience, the the adolescent that I was nannying for, she became like very withdrawn, and that was just like y'all are saying, like paying attention to what's abnormal. That wasn't really like her. And when she did kind of have more energy, it was a more aggressive kind of energy that she was putting off. And she also had like a big change in like her eating habits. She would call home from school a lot and say, I'm having stomach issues, like I'm just really nauseous, I want to go home. And it was just a lot of like something clearly was off, but obviously nobody really knew what it was in the moment. But just seeing those changes in behavior and really knowing the individuals in your life is like the biggest thing to me.
I'm gonna agree with all of that stuff. But also, what we look for at work is some emotional changes. So like sometimes they won't eat at all, sometimes they'll just sleep all day. So noticing like emotional things that are wrong as well as some physical things. Because I work at a clinic for kids who have disabilities, we have to write accidents or incident reports all the time, even if it's like something really, really small that's not going to leave a mark. So like if we notice like scratches on their back or like on their arms or like somewhere like weird or suspicious, like we keep our eye out for those kind of things too.
Interesting. And I think, Maddie, we've had this conversation before, when it's a younger kid or even just like, when it's someone beyond the age of where they should be potty trained, sometimes they'll revert back and start like bedwetting or having issues with that when they are experiencing like sexual abuse.
Yeah, they'll just start peeing on themselves all the time, or they'll just like start acting like a baby again, even if they're like 5 years old.
Yeah, we'll go back to that regression. So as teachers, daycare workers, childcarers, did y'all ever receive any kind of training on this topic of like what to look for, what to do, or I know schools probably have different, obviously, mandates of daycares, but what kind of training have you ever been given on this topic?
I was given online training called Pro Solutions. It's what all of our training's through. Basically, it's not the best, but it's not the worst. You just read these PowerPoint slides and then you take a test at the end. But also, I'm still in school, so we have had classes on how we have to like, we're mandated reporters and like signs and stuff like that.
Okay.
The preschool.
Yes. Go ahead. You go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Speaking from the school perspective, I know that we are an Aaron's Law state in Alabama, so we do. We're required to have training every year through Aaron's Law, and it's an online platform. I know that I've experienced, and it's more of a checklist item most of the time, which is sad to say, but it is. We're required to listen to videos and take tests that, most of the time nobody really pays much attention to. But there is a requirement, like I said. So we do things like that, but it's more, there needs to be more accountability, I would definitely say so, in what you learn and what you take in from those courses.
And I taught at a preschool in a church, and so we actually had to do a training called Safe Sanctuaries, and so it went over like signs and stuff, but it also mostly just went over like about things that we had to do to keep ourselves safe. Like, if you're ever with a child and they have an accident or something and you have to be in there, you need to leave the door open or always have somebody else there with you. So that was what kind of training we had.
I also teach in Alabama, so we did Aaron's Law, and it was the same platform online. And as Brack said, it is very much of a, these are the things we have to do before the school year starts. And this is one of them. And, you watch the videos, you answer the questions, and then, it's checked off the list.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the same way. We have to do it has to be completed at the beginning of the school year. Along with all the beginning of the year training that we have to go through. But yeah, it's an online platform that you go through. It'll take you through scenarios, and because we are mandatory reporters, we have to we have to kind of check that off the list for that.
Yeah. So I'm actually glad that y'all mentioned Aaron's Law, because that really just brings me into question 5. I know Tony, Carly, and Brack has kind of said that they do know what Aaron's Law is, and in the state of Alabama, we are required to teach Aaron's Law. For anyone who is listening, Aaron's Law is basically teaching children about child sexual abuse, good touch, bad touch, going over a little bit of body safety, stranger danger, all that kind of stuff. But in our curriculum, because actually our organization is thankfully we have a separate prevention education program, and we're able to personally go into schools in the counties we serve. So that's not on y'all as educators. So that can be like our job, because you guys are dealing with test prep, like all kinds of other things. So we thankfully are able to take that burden off of y'all and do the Aaron's Law ourselves as like a sexual violence center. So it is something that, like, with the younger kids, we focus on that body safety. But as we go in middle school, high school, we talk a lot about like safe dating, healthy relationships, going over like dating abuse and things like that. So Tony, Carly, and Brack, you guys said you did know what Aaron's Law is. Maddie, have you heard of Aaron's Law before this moment right now?
I have, and Arkansas is also a part of that.
Okay, that's true. I forget that you're from Arkansas, so that's good to know. I think like there's like 7 states that don't have Aaron's Law mandates yet. Someone needs to fact check me on that, but I know it's not a ton, but it's still not good enough.
Well, I now live in Alabama, but being from Georgia, I actually didn't know what Aaron's Law was until I believe it got, Georgia took on Aaron's Law, I believe 2017, 2018. And that's when I first heard about it, because my mom's an educator and she had to learn about that, and, go through all of the trainings with that. But before that, I had never heard of that, and we were never taught anything like that in schools. And we had never been told that we'd need to teach anything like that.
I think, again, fact check me on this, I believe in the state of Alabama, Aaron's Law was introduced in either 2014 or 2015. So it's fairly new to this state as well. But I do recall, and of course, I lived in a bigger city in Alabama. I lived in Huntsville when I was in like kindergarten, elementary school. I very vaguely remember something very similar to Aaron's Law being taught, even when it wasn't mandated. But so Amanda, Brantley, and Maddie, in y'all's experience, have you ever had to do Aaron's Law training yourselves?
I have not.
Not until I started RCEA.
Okay.
I did for one daycare, but not anything else.
The teachers, when y'all go through that training, is it then, kind of your responsibility to teach that to your children?
I think speaking from a high school perspective, I think they get that in their health class. I'm pretty sure at some point, which I don't know the mandates as far as children goes. Is that an every year thing? Like they get that every year?
They're supposed to.
Okay. Well, then if that was the case, what I was talking about, then they don't get it every year. I don't know when they work it in, but yeah, I would imagine, and I think that they definitely do that in health class, but that's only 1 year. So I don't know. I have not personally witnessed any other time that has been taught.
Our counselors do it. Sorry, at our school.
That's what I was gonna say too.
Yeah, like they meet. Our counselors meet with every grade level every month, at least once, and so they have it, I think, into their curriculum to do it. Now, when is it taught during the year? I'm not sure because but they have it to do, and they, like I said, they take it in a class setting and do it.
Okay.
Ours is the same way. Our counselor will meet with each of our classes at least once a month. And, she'll have different topics every time, but that is one of the topics.
Okay.
And I would imagine that I'm a history teacher, so they don't normally come into a history classroom.
Yeah.
So I would imagine they would do that in some type of science classroom or something like that. But I would imagine that they have the same setup and as far as counselors sharing and things like that.
I will say from our perspective, when we are able to go into schools, we'll kind of do it very similarly. We will hit each school. We'll just have one big presentation per how they want to do. Usually it's by grade. So like we'll go in, we'll do like all the first graders one day. But that'll be something that we go in and we do just like once every school year, that they're like required to meet that. And I know some counselors that we've talked to say that they supplement what we do, just because, it would be pretty hard to go through all of that, especially when you have like kindergarten first graders who can't sit still for more than 15 minutes to listen. But we really, I think, had people come to rely on us to come in and do that for them. So it is something I think I'm proud that our services are able to provide that to our counties and alleviate just a little bit of something from them. So yeah, if you didn't know about Aaron's Law, you guys just got a real good crash course, listeners out there. So we kind of answered this question already, but have any of you ever done any other sexual violence prevention education in your line of work?
I haven't.
I think it's been a long time, but I used to work at a youth development center. I worked at a STARS program, which I guess is kind of considered like a girls' boot camp. And then I also worked at a detention facility for juveniles. And I do believe I did have some trainings, but that was 15 plus years ago. So I can't really clearly remember, but I do remember us having trainings on that, because we do have a lot of children that were in there that had experienced, sexual abuse. So I know that we did get a lot of training on that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm hearing a general consensus from everyone else that it's no. Yeah. Okay. So do you believe that teachers, child carers, daycare workers, anyone who's responsible for the well-being of a child, do you think that this is a responsibility that they have to be educated on this topic and to somewhat intervene when they kind of see these warning signs or have someone come and speak to them?
Absolutely.
Yeah, same.
I do. That's just, I feel like we are, kids are with us, especially teachers, for 8 hours a day. So we, and we are their advocates. And sometimes when it's happening at home, their only safe place is school. And so I feel like we have to be there for them, and we've got to speak up for them, and we have to be their voice, because they're not getting it. If something's going on with them, they're not getting it where they should. They're not being able to. We're their advocate. We have to be there for them.
I agree with Tony, and that's why it's so important that we should be trained on things like that, because we do see them, especially in education, for 8 hours a day. And me coming out of college, a college student doesn't know what to look for if you haven't been taught and you haven't been trained. So it does me no good to be their advocate if I don't know what I'm looking for. So I think that's a huge part of, Aaron's Law is a huge step, because I know things just from Aaron's Law that I wouldn't have known before stepping into the education field. I learned things in school, but there were still some things in Aaron's Law that, like Amanda was saying earlier, watching them in like play settings, I'm going to focus more on that now because I've been taught that. So I think that's a huge, that's just important that we are trained so that we can be an adequate advocate, not just an advocate.
I'm in my position. I definitely think, obviously, that teachers need to be advocates for their students, but I also think, since I have older students and even younger students, that we need to teach them to be advocates and speak up and let them know that in your classroom, at least, that there is a no judgment zone. regardless of, what the case may be. And I feel like we as teachers are able to do that. I feel like we're on the front lines of situations like this because a lot of times, like Tony said, we are the ones that these children trust. We are their outlet. If they have, a home life where something like this is happening, a lot of times that we're the only people that they would tell because we built those relationships. So I definitely think that not only is it our responsibility as educators and, child care workers to be advocates, but also to teach self-advocacy to our students and our children.
Yeah.
And I agree with everybody because I know just sometimes in school settings, especially when you do spend a lot of time with children, you become their safe haven, especially if they have a family life that's not very good. And I think that's like with COVID-19, when Faith, if you remember us talking to my friend that's a DHR worker, the numbers were down, but they definitely were like, once school starts back, those numbers are going to skyrocket because those children have been kept at home and they haven't had a way to tell anybody. They haven't had people watching for those red flags and trying to take care of their self well-being. So I definitely think that's very important and actually during the whole COVID-19 quarantine, a lot of people were like, oh, my children are here 24/7. This is hard. This is, but in the back of my mind, all I did was really think about those kids that were in really bad situations because it just makes it even worse for them. And then, that's the reason your numbers are down at DHR. You don't want your numbers to be up at DHR because you don't want that to be happening. But in reality, it's because people aren't reporting because the people that are reporting it is mostly teachers, coaches, and, those people that are reporting it.
Okay, well, we're about to move into our final question. But before we do this, does anyone have any comments, anything else they would like to add or say before we kind of end? No?
Well, I think it's important to know that it is everything that we're talking about tonight is a major issue in our country, and it's happening more than what people probably realize, and so it's important to be taught. And I think where it starts to hopefully stopping the problem is talking about it and getting people more comfortable to come forward, feeling comfortable to talk about it and to tell other people so it can stop. But I really do think, just being in the education system and coaching as long as I have, there's just more than what people really realize that it's going on.
And that is really one of our main goals of this podcast, is to provide that awareness and destigmatization of being a victim of sexual violence, because we don't want to see, obviously, our numbers go up, but to us it kind of is a sign that, hey, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, because these people probably just were not reporting before. So we definitely see that a lot. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to ask you guys our last question that we always ask our podcast guests to end our episodes. So what is your message to survivors?
Mine is, don't feel pressured to talk about it until you're ready to talk about it.
Mine would be, don't let it define you, but let it change you. Like, don't let that define you, that you can still be anything you want to be. One bad situation that happens in your life shouldn't mess up the rest of your life. You know what I'm saying? And so don't let that be that moment that you feel like it is taken away from you. No, you take it back, and you be the person that takes it back, and you go forward with that and be the person that you're called to be and you're supposed to be.
Yeah, piggybacking off what Tony just said, before I came into this, I actually watched some videos of Erin Moran, because I didn't want to have any. I wanted some background information. So I watched some of her videos, and I think something to tell survivors is look at her and look at where she's at and look at where she's been and look at the progress that she has made, not for just herself, but for the entire country, and different parts of the world, I'm sure. that she's had an impact on. So I think don't allow your circumstances and what you've been through to determine your future. So move on and do something about it, and try and prevent it from happening to other people in the future. So yeah, don't allow your circumstances to keep you down.
Kind of going off also what Brack said, that one, you're not alone, as far as, that is a good point to make, that, this has happened. Now, not the exact same situation. Each person has their own unique situation, but you're not alone in some of those feelings, and you're not alone with some of those things. So again, don't let that define you. Push forward to be what you can be and what you want to be. And just, take hold of the people that do love you and that you can trust, and use those resources as you go on through your life.
And I guess I would piggyback off everybody else, and, you're not alone. And I think, too, the biggest thing is telling people that there is hope, and that time does heal. It may take a long time. It takes some people longer than others, but just knowing that there are people out there that are your support system. There are people out there that love you. There are people that care about you, and it may even be people that you don't even know, but there are people that are constantly fighting for you, even when you don't realize they're fighting for you, and that you're not alone, and that there's so much hope for you. And I always like to tell people that, things happen in our lives, some really bad things, and it's kind of like it's a chapter in your book, but it's not your whole book, and that there's always another chapter that you're going to turn to, and that chapter is going to be better, or it may be worse, but every day is a new day, and there's just hope, and that there's people that love you, and to reach out to people, especially like if you know someone, or you have school teachers or coaches or anyone in the school system, or anyone in your family, or anybody that you're friends with, their parents, whoever, reach out to those people, because they're there, especially educators. They're there because they want to be. There's not a lot of money in it. There's not a lot of benefits to it. So they're there because they care. And so they're there to help you.
I think I would just say, you don't realize how many people are on your team. There are so many people that will stand beside you, stand behind you, go in front of you, and just hold you through the whole process. Just when you're ready and when you're willing, let them, because that's what they want to do.
Well, thank you guys so much for all joining us today. This was a really good podcast, and I felt like we had some good discussion. I'm actually going to be putting some resources for survivors of child sexual violence below, and kind of like things that would be helpful if you were to find out someone in your life was experiencing this, just for any listeners out there who may need those resources. But that is all we have for you guys today, and we will see you on the next podcast. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.